All right, everyone, we're live. Welcome to another episode of LunarCRUSH Live. We're super excited today to have some awesome guests here with us. Today we've got Erick, Pinos, and John Izaguirre. Is that how you say it?
That's it. You got it.
Boom. They're here talking about Wing Finance, right? And you were part of kind of the core Ontology team as well. And so I'd love to kind of hear about how those things kind of intermix. But first, just kind of let everyone know, where you are in the world and what it's like where you're at in this in the crazy work from home. Maybe we'll start with you, Erick.
So thanks for having me on. I'm in New Jersey, right across the river from New York, about 30 minutes out from the city. Mm-hmm. And I mean, for me, things because I work remote, I work online, kind of at my own schedule, not like typical 9 to 5.
Right.
I didn't really see that much of a change in my working style. If anything, I got the chance to be more productive because you're not constantly at conferences and parties and social gatherings, right? So, but I think I've learned to kind of tone it back a bit, and in terms of work, and just because it's easy to just when you're working from home to just start working all the time. So I think I've stepped back, gotten some hobbies, connecting with friends on Zoom. I think at this point, most of us are getting used to this work from home lifestyle. And I think that even as things start to lighten up, I think a lot of people are going to find that they enjoy it and they kind of want to stay in that kind of lifestyle.
Yeah, very, very cool. Yeah, no, it's interesting to, you definitely have a little bit more time to connect with people. You're not maybe connecting in the same way, but it's, sometimes you can kind of find that you can be a little bit more efficient. And in our, crazy industry where you're talking to people from all over the world, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier and you're not on planes and everything like that. So that's good to hear. And how about you, John?
Yeah, pretty much the same in here. I'm based in Berlin. Well, basically, I'm based in Europe, and I spend a lot of time in Berlin, which is my home base. But also I travel quite a lot to Spain, mostly Madrid, since my family lives in there, but also the ecosystem is kind of, the blockchain ecosystem is very interesting in that area. And in remote work, I've been working like that for quite some time now, so I'm used to it. And I mean, it's kind of interesting because for all of us, I believe, right, in our industry, working remote is kind of that's how it goes. And now that I see kind of the whole community telling me about and kind of going crazy and they don't know how to structure their day, it's interesting. They see me as a guru, so I have to explain how it works, how you have to create a routine, how you have to work out, go out, take some sun. So yeah, I mean, let's see how it goes, if that's going to be the new normal.
Yeah, we're definitely in a new normal. And I think, over the last couple of months, it's not only kind of brought finance to the forefront from a traditional standpoint, but I think it's also brought crypto to the forefront. And you've got more people asking questions like, well, what does it look like when these governments print $5 trillion? And, what do the economics look like for myself, as an investor in that space? And so I think it's been, a crazy time, and it's brought DeFi specifically to the forefront. And so I'm excited to talk with you guys a little bit today and hear a little bit more. I mean, Ontology's been around for a long time. I mean, I think a lot of people kind of know that name in the space. I mean, we've definitely kind of featured Ontology on LunarCRUSH, as our spotlight coin of the day comes up. It's got a good community as far as social goes. So, I mean, if you guys want to kind of break into Ontology a little bit, and for those people that don't know too much about, how the platform works and kind of what the vision and stuff was for Ontology, maybe we can talk a little bit about that to start. And if either one of you guys want to kind of go into that, that would be great.
Erick is a charming one. Erick, go for it. Kill it.
Sure. So we are a high performance blockchain, a public blockchain, and a decentralized trust platform. So we focused a lot. Since starting, we focused a lot on enterprise use cases. What are the real world use cases that blockchain is applicable for and that could actually have an impact in? Things like medical records, energy markets, real estate, notarization, legal documents, supply chain, And those things that all of these things, one of the things that they all have in common is they need strong identity solutions, digital identity solutions. That's a common thread across all these different platforms. And, even financial markets. So I see someone already shouted out Wing, which is one of the newest platforms that we're working on. But what really powering Wing is a decentralized credit score, which we've built, which is based off of our decentralized identity framework that we have. Right. So like building out these kinds of use cases on top of it allows us to tap into markets that are normally left unexplored in the crypto space. I think a lot of the crypto space is really cool, but a lot of it is really isolated. So we're tying it back to the real world with real world concepts like the credit score and with, supply chain and with identity and giving people these identity to work on these real use cases and help bridge blockchain to the real world. So those are the kinds of use cases that we've always focused on. And that's kind of where we've really found a specialty in.
It's interesting. I mean, we've talked a lot, especially, on this live show, and then just John and I just in general about, the different use cases and how DeFi is going to bring that to light. But I haven't heard anyone specifically talk about credit score and specifically talk about, how important that is. It's like, sure, you kind of glance over it when you talk about things like, well, yeah, I'm going to be able to, instantaneously get a loan from a crowdsourced, aspect of people based on X, and then I'm going to be able to buy this house, blah, blah, blah. But no one really talks about, well, how do you instantaneously get that borrowing ability, and what does the credit score of the future look like? So maybe you could talk a little bit about how you guys are going to kind of, attack that, and, what goes into kind of creating that credit score of the future, like on the blockchain.
Yeah, well, the main thing with the credit score is, I think it's kind of it's almost like a taboo, dirty word that blockchain people don't like hearing, like, oh, credit score, but let's take a step back and think why we don't like credit scores. We don't like credit scores right now because credit scores are outside of our control. Like credit card companies and banks have this, it's like a secret that they know about us, like, oh, this is this person's reputation, these are the assets, they buy the records and then they aggregate all of your data together in their records, and then they charge you money to go and see your own score. And every time you try to use your score goes down. So like, it's like Schrodinger's cat, like knowing your score hurts it. And it's just, and then they get hacked and then they lose your data, and it's like, oh, we lost it. Like, it's on the black market now. Here's $100 settlement. So it's like, what kind of system is this? What we really want to do is kind of take what blockchain is great at, and that's privacy, encryption, self-sovereign, capabilities, and apply that. We're applying it to identity, and then an extension of that is applying it to a credit score. So like, you own your own credit score. It's your data. You choose which platforms you want to share it with. And instead of limiting access to certain platforms based on your credit score, instead we're incentivizing users with additional benefits for using a credit score. So on the Wing platform specifically, right now you could do typical over collateralized lending. Like you could, put in $10,000 and borrow $5,000 or whatever the collateralization ratio is set at. With the credit score, you're actually incentivizing people to use the credit score and build a credit score such that they can start putting up less collateral and even under collateralized loans. I put in $8,000, but because I have a good credit score, I can borrow up to $10,000 as an example. So you're incentivizing users to opt into the system, but you're making sure that it's an opt-in system.
When you say credit score,
so the actual credit score itself.
Are you referring? Yeah. Go ahead. I think we have a bad connection.
No, go ahead, John. Say it again.
Sorry, I think I'm cutting out over here. Okay. When you say credit score, are you saying like a traditional credit score, or is this some sort of a hybrid model with other factors involved, like say involvement in the project, social interactions, things like that? What exactly are you referring to?
Yeah, that's a good question. The credit score is a hybrid model. So the factors that we consider into the credit score right now that make up, it's really like a credit report. And the factors that go into the report is the net worth of the user across different blockchains. So, your balances on Ontology, but also your balances on Ethereum and some of the other chains that we're partnered with. You can see like a list of partners that we have. you can bind the addresses together from different blockchains to make up your Ont ID is what we call it. And then that creates your credit score. We also consider the total debt that you're in across different lending platforms, and then the number of times that you've been liquidated. So, what does your lending history look like on Compound or Aave, and how many times have you been liquidated there? Those components are important for the credit score. So in a way, it's a crypto native credit score because it's looking at cryptocurrency data, and then you could supplement that, especially people that don't have a lot of already exposure to these platforms or haven't been using them. We're working with the Plate API and different platforms and like the Equifax API to like integrate traditional credit scores so that you could bring that over. And so now there's an element of the traditional credit score integrated into it as well. And it can expand. It doesn't just have to be financial data. Like it also works for reputational data. So that is an interesting thing to go into, right? Like also looking at behavior and usage and time used and rewarding loyal users, which I think is something needed in this space because there's a lot of right now of like people just hopping from DeFi platform to DeFi platform looking for the next big thing, and there's not that much incentivizing loyalty or longevity.
Right. It's just all about the yield and the interest, which is at some point it's like you got to create a dApp around it. You can't just create 1,000 different interest-bearing DeFi blockchains that do nothing. So that is interesting. You talk about the credit score as like, it's not so much that people hate credit scores, it's that they hate that they can't control or access them. And it's not going to work out when you say, hey, if I check this, it goes down. It's like, wait a minute, what? Like if I try and increase or like learn about this, technically my credit score goes down, and it's a reversed and inverse system. And it's funny. It's like I remember 15 years ago being in college and having a utility bill on my name, and then I went to study abroad for a couple of months, and I come back and someone didn't pay a utility bill, and I had a small ding on my credit, and it took me like 7 years to get this thing off. I'm talking like and then it was like a $25 bill. And once I got it removed, it was like the credit score went from like 580 to like 807. I was like, the system is broken, right? And it's like, but if you've got good credit, you're not too worried about it. But if you don't, that's something that you're seriously worried about because it's giving you access to, to borrowing and lending, which is, not just borrowing and lending. It's, potentially a car, potentially a house, potentially these things that allow you to kind of move ahead in society and kind of create your life. So this is a super interesting, piece, I think, to the infrastructure of the space. And so it's exciting to hear that you guys are working on that specifically. But the credit score is it's a piece of kind of what you guys are doing. And then there's still lending and other things that are kind of attached to this, right? I'm seeing, on the site now, it says 226 million in assets deposited. I mean, when did you guys launch Wing?
So it's a good question. So we launched Wing as a flash pool about 4 or 5 ago, Eric. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was a sense of time, to be fairly honest. It was about 5.
Which there's really only been like 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
The deposits are open.
Well.
Yeah. And the development has been massive. So now we got the token, which is called the Wing token, got listed on Binance pretty quickly. And I mean, the interesting part about the whole platform and Ontology itself as well is that everything is work in progress, right? So we were talking about these credit platforms, traditional credit platforms or scoring platforms, right? And why people don't trust it. Well, first of all, because you don't have access to those platforms. Who actually controls your credit? Why goes from 400 to 800? Why? What's the sense of it? Who's controlling? Who's dictating that rule? And also, those scoring companies, and this works in Europe, is that they play the middleman. Basically, the scoring companies are right in between yourself as an individual and a real estate, or getting a loan to pay for your college tuition, or buying a car, whatever. They just play that middleman, and if you don't have the right score, the credit score, then you don't get that asset that you might in your life to survive, to move forward. And what we thought about was, well, there is a component in the industry which is DeFi and is growing, and there are several aspects to it, right? But how can we bring more transparency to an industry that is being not only overlooked by the traditional finance, but also is getting a bit out of control, right? If you look at what's happened with some memes and you feel that there is a sense of madness. And we thought, well, how to bring a sense of transparency, a sense of responsibility. And we believe that connecting your identity, whether decentralized in this case, and adding a scoring is going to bring at least a sense of, okay, 1 till 10, let's see where you are in there based on your transactions, on your past, which is all in the blockchain. And also, again, the interesting part is that this is open source. So all the tools that we're using are uploaded. So people can actually, developers can go there and see what's going on, use those tools as well, use the identity frameworks with what we use and work with. And this is something that you cannot do in the, if you want to call it, in the traditional world. So we hope that more people learn not only about DeFi, but also what means decentralized identity in the 21st century. Actually, what is identity in the 21st century, and how you're supposed to be self-sovereign and you're supposed to have ownership of it. And yeah, I mean, it all plays down to ownership. And this is our hope, right? To see more people caring about that.
Yeah, for sure. And
I have a question around you. When you say ownership, I mean, I think it's one side of the equation to evaluate the users that are investing in projects, and there's another side to evaluate the founders.
Yeah.
And a lot of DeFi projects, there's a lot of scams out there, and you got to hope and a prayer that this thing's legitimate. They're not going to dump on you. They're not going to, launch a Telegram group, ask for money, and then vanish. Is there any thoughts around evaluating the founders of these projects that are setting these things up?
100%. And it's interesting because, yes, I mean, when you go in blockchain and DeFi, and you see a lot of stuff that happens, right? And I believe that there has to be also an ownership of these owners of these protocols to identify themselves, to communicate properly, to be out there, whether webinars, fire chats, AMAs, you name it. But the connection has to be there. And I think, in all honesty, the connection between protocol founders and the community is much more closer than a traditional IPO company and its community, right? You will never see any more Zuckerberg addressing their community on an AMA or fire chat, right? Whether there's an interest in between. You don't see that from the traditional companies. And also keep in mind that in the traditional world, you also have major scams like work, right? So, I mean, it really depends on how you see it. But in terms of ownership and specifically DeFi, yes, I agree with you. The owners and responsible people for each one of these projects, they have to be accountable. There has to be also regulation. There has to be regulation for the crypto market and for the blockchain industry itself. So this has to come from bottom up, I believe, as well. Mm-hmm. How you see it, Eric?
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting proposition. I mean, a reputation score works just as well for founders and for projects as it does for users. And I noticed that some projects have, started initiatives like this to score projects based off of trustworthiness. I think it's a natural extension of the OntID and the decentralized identity framework that we have to give these scores to projects and to give these scores to founders, because a lot of the scams are repeat scams. You'll see that a certain subset of these DeFi scams all look the same and are hosted on the same, web servers and are run as, if you do a little digging, you can see that they're run by the same people or loosely affiliated people. So these aren't one-time scammers. These are people that are coming back and trying to do it multiple times. And I think that as a project, it's important to really set Wing apart you know, as a project, like with longevity, with a product that actually has a product, like the yield isn't the product. Like it's all of these DeFi food platforms just like, well, what's the product? It's like, oh, it's the APY. The APY is the product. And it's like, okay, so it's a Ponzi. It's like, no, it's a meme. Like, okay, it's a Ponzi with the meme branding. Like this isn't new. This has been happening for years on the Tron blockchain, and now that it's coming on the Ethereum blockchain, now people are embracing it as some kind of like, oh, now it's okay, because now it's not Ponzi's anymore. Now it's memes, right? So I think that there's a lot we have to cut through, and a lot of like BS that we have to cut through, because I think DeFi does have potential, especially in the areas of decentralized lending, which is where we're looking at.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And you know, I was on a conference yesterday and talking to like a DeFi investors, and they had a lot of VCs, and people were asking like, what is a scam project, right? And it's such a, I think people need to understand that we're dealing with just a bunch of startups, right? And if someone has their heart in it and their passion in it and they're trying to build it, there's still like a 95% chance that a startup will fail, even if they're trying the hardest that they've ever tried in their entire life. It's not that they're trying to scam people. That's different than, you know, I forget the one a couple of days ago. It was like YDX something .finance, and they walked away with 20 million. And it was, you know, they basically we went back and looked at some of our stats on LunarCRUSH, just because we're pulling all these, you know, the Twitter giveaways and things that they did down. And even though they deleted their account, this project basically just did like 48 giveaways that are 2 weeks, right? And when they did that, they just started you know, pushing this, and the price started going up, and it was kind of, you know, you could tell right away that this thing was a scam. But, you know, people need to understand that there's a difference between the giveaway scam and something like that, and someone that is legitimately attempting to try and build something. And there's a difference there. And like, you know, even, you know, you guys getting on here and being on a live stream, there's a big difference between that and someone that's, like you said, just like some sort of pseudonym on a Twitter account doing giveaways. And so I think that the market's starting to kind of understand that a little bit more, and it's going to take a little bit more time. And people need to understand that, especially when you look at the price and everything else that's going on with some of these coins. It's like, imagine if, you know, Uber went public per se in the first like 6 months of them, you know, being live. You know, that would be insane. The volatility and the craziness would be insane. And so it's just a different era I think we're going into. And so I think it's, you know, it's good that you guys are kind of coming from that perspective. So kind of switching gears a little bit. How do people interface with Wing today? I mean, is there an app? Is there like on the site? Can I connect? Can I get loans today? I mean, is it going to take time to get your credit score and everything organized?
I kind of understood that there was a lot of lag. Not lag. There was a lot of echo. There is a lot of echo right now.
Oh, sorry. Let me try to.
Hello? Oh, okay. Yeah, that works. All right, so the question is it live? Can people lend and borrow?
Yes.
Yeah. So that hasn't gone live yet. That goes live, I think, like in a day or maybe like a few days. What's open now is the deposits and the withdrawals. So you could deposit, you could withdraw, you could asset swap. So you can asset swap your wrap Bitcoin or your REN Bitcoin or your USDC into WBTC, PUSD, right? PCUSDC. They're essentially like pegged tokens on the Ontology blockchain, and that enables you to deposit them into the Wing platform. And then, total value locked, right? There's already, I think the last time I checked, I saw like $150 million worth of ONT locked at least right now. And yeah, there's a 10x reward. I hear the echo. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's the audio keeps kind of spinning. I'm not sure why it's I'm gonna stay on mute though, so hopefully it'll be a little bit better.
I guess when whoever's not speaking, just like the other three people, just be on mute. I think that would be the easiest.
Yep.
So yeah, right now it's a lot about getting the Wing token out there to people so that they can participate in the governance and do the voting on like new collateral types. What the direction of the platform, what kind of marketing campaign should we use? What should we use the treasury for? The community run treasury. So that's kind of like where we are right now. The lending and borrowing that starts in a few days. So that should be exciting, because then once that happens, then it becomes a full-fledged platform that you could like lend and borrow on it.
The community a sense of transparency again, and that this is actually a product incubated within the Ontology core organization. So you will need to either use your Onto wallet, which is a mobile application called the Onto wallet, or your Ciano wallet, which is your desktop, kind of the MetaMask application of Ontology as well. So people will need to connect their wallets, and they can withdraw their Wing tokens, and then they connect to their exchange that they prefer, whether Binance, OKX, or in the ones that were being listed at the moment. So again, it's just to give the sense that Ontology as a project is behind, that is being backed up, and we are there to answer any of their questions, whether Telegram or shout out, email. We are going to be there. We are there for the community. Also, I think that's also very, very important to note as well. And as Erick mentioned before, the lending and all the other activities start in a couple of days. Right now, we're getting our feet on the ground with the launch of the token, making sure that the governance works right, and we're going to start listening to the community and their votes and see how we can proceed and move forward with what the community wants. So that's a strategy.
That's great. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the Binance launch pool and, how that got kind of put together. I think I'm reading that they've only done this a couple of times. And so, you guys are one of the first projects to kind of go through this process. So tell us what it was like kind of working with them and kind of putting this together and creating this and how that process kind of came together.
Yeah, I think it was a really good collaboration. John, could you put yourself on mute? Yeah, I think it was a really good collaboration, especially because we're transitioning as an industry to a very cross-chain future. I think we're seeing that Ethereum has a lot of market share, but also a lot of limitations. And it's not about killing Ethereum or replacing it, but it's about what is the interoperability here and what are the specializations that different blockchains can target into. So, collaborating with Binance on it and earning ONT through the Binance platform, or not earning Wing through the Binance platform, because you're also, on the Binance platform, you can also be earning Bella and Swipe, right? So you're giving the users that are using it exposure to a bunch of different DeFi projects that they normally wouldn't have explored otherwise if they had just stuck to one blockchain. So it's definitely a good way to reach new audiences and also to reach exchange users as well, because not everyone has made the leap to Uniswap. Not everyone has made the leap to MetaMask and setting that up and then participating on all these platforms. So I do think that exchanges still have a role to play, especially for the majority of people that are just now starting to awaken to DeFi and awaken to what's going on in the DeFi space. So that was definitely a good collaboration that we really enjoyed doing, and we look forward to doing more collaborations with other partners.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And, the consumer market hasn't necessarily, like you said, adopted to a purely decentralized DEX kind of environment or a liquidity pool environment yet. And it's going to take some time. It's a new thing. And I think the kind of hardcore community is in love with it. I think they love the way that they get to interact with those products, and it's great. But I think it's still going to take some time to onboard the new folks into the industry that otherwise would probably like a little bit of coverage. It's like here in the US, it's something like a Coinbase or a Gemini where, there's some custody in place, there's, some insurance and companies are in place to kind of protect some of that stuff. And it's going to take some time. And so I think it's a good way to go about launching something is to, access an audience that's potentially already in place. And, it's like, whether Binance love them or hate them, they've created a great audience of people to, launch new products into. So it's a nice test bed. And so I think it's really cool that you guys kind of went down that route and kind of got access to that. So I think it's a route that potentially other projects maybe underestimate a little bit to get access. And because, John and I talk about it a lot, marketing, community, is a big part of adoption and getting your, you can have the best, product in the world. And, we always say, it's, if you can throw yourself the best birthday party ever and you don't tell anyone about it, you're going to be sitting there by yourself. And so, I think it's great. And so talk a little bit about the community with Ontology and Wing. And, we've kind of tracked the community for a while. And it seems like, for us, we always talk about kind of a groundswell of community and kind of just growing over time slowly, nothing kind of too crazy. I mean, how do you guys kind of think about growth and marketing and getting kind of the message out to people for the new products?
It's a massive question. Communities and marketing we were talking actually about that, Eric and I, before. Marketing and communities in the block world is definitely different. It's an animal on its own, right? So within the blockchain communities, you have different layers of industry players. So you have the institutionals, you have the retail, you have the traders, you have the miners, you have the anarchists, you have the hardcore. So there is a bit of everything, and you have to be respectful and think them and connect with them. You have to find those ways. So the way we approach is, I will say, very organic. We work in 29 channels. That means in 29 languages as well. And we listen to the community. We constantly do AMAs. We constantly do fire chats. Our co-founder, Andy, is constantly, at least in the English channel, communicating with the member and asking, guys, what would you like to see next? We have this new set of tools. Why don't you try it? They're free. Just go for it. And if they need help, we will instruct any solutions architect that might be able to support them with these new tools. So it's organic, and at the same time, we take our time to think about each strategy. Also think about the regions that we cover. I'm in Europe, which is a completely different market than the US, which is a completely different market than Japan, Indonesia, and so on. So it's a lot of listening. It's a lot of taking time to evaluate what's best, not only for the organization, but also for the community and also for the governance, for the mechanism itself. And then it's just executing step by step. So we would prefer to actually grow rather slowly but surely, instead of super exponential, super fast, but then losing track, not even knowing who are your community managers. So this is something we avoid, and I strongly believe in that approach. Whether we need more advertising, whether we need a more funky, savvy, whatever you want to call it, kind of presence, sure, I think we do. We speak about these openly, and we're planning something for Q4 and for Q1 2021 to see how that roll out. There are a bunch of news coming, so stay tuned.
You actually said the word constantly. I think 10 times. And I think that's a big piece that a lot of projects are missing. We see, because we track this data constantly all day, every day. And there are many projects that will do things like, they'll do a campaign and then it's done, or they'll hire an influencer or 10 and it's done. And you see that when it's a calm period, the community is just not there talking about it. And one of the things that we've seen with Ontology is a constant flow of social interaction, social engagement. And when we look at the number of individual accounts that are actually, say, tweeting about Ontology, it's kind of like this continuous rise. If we look over the last 6 months, versus there was one big day and then it dropped, and then another big day and then it dropped. And so I think that's really important what you're saying, and it's sorely missed. It's a huge miss on the part of most projects. But do you have is there a central team coordinating this stuff, or how exactly do you get all of the different individuals on your team kind of rallying around constant activity? Because it's an effort. It's a lot of work to be out there, to be on camera, and to be tweeting all day. So
excellent point. And I mean, I have to give a shout out to our marketing team. If you don't mind, I want to name the ladies, Christina and Randy. They are superb. These ladies, so basically we do have a marketing team in the HQ, and we have a central marketing team creating, anything from community growth strategies to advertising strategies to communication strategies. We also work marketing agency. So I would say that it's a pretty traditional way of generating and creating in a company, right? However, again, it comes also organically for community managers. These online, or you want to call it digital community managers, they are dealing with the communities basically 24/7. And these guys and girls are wrestling. They are answering questions, they're listening. And then they just give whether a bi-weekly feedback or a monthly feedback to our marketing team. They studied it, they read it, they pay attention to it, and based on that feedback, we'll create a roadmap and a plan and a strategy for it. So also, I would like to mention as well that the Ontology founders are extremely open-minded individuals. They actually like funky ideas. They like to create. Actually, if you think about it, Ontology, I don't want to say is the only one because it's not, but say is the most reputable or one of the most reputable chains that actually are gambling their future. And I mean their energy, their time, their passion, their youth into identity and data. It's not a blockchain, which is just gambling into, as you said before, just a quick win, or into something like, institutional, say, Hyperledger, and kind of like, okay, cool, we have a bunch of companies and that's it. No, Ontology is thinking about what really matters. And in the 21st century, I think data and how you use it and identity, I think that's kind of the base for how the society will function and how it will develop. And so again, big shout out to the founders as well. And cooperation, listening, and respect towards the community, man. Without them, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have a job. So I don't know how you see it, Eric. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with what John said. It's a lot. We also have a lot of community admins and a lot of people that advocate for Ontology, where we have the Harbinger program. And so that is just all the community members in the different languages. They help with translating the content and the Ontology announcements into different languages and posting it into the different Telegram groups. And they help manage those different Telegram groups for people that are interacting with Ontology in different languages, even translations for the applications themselves. So like the Onto mobile data wallet, we have the different community admins that help with translating it into Spanish, translating it into Japanese, into Korean. So the apps themselves are available in different languages. And that's definitely something that, at a certain point, there's only so much that HQ can do and that as a foundation we can do. So it's a community-led initiative, right? And it's a community-led revolution that they really want to see it brought to their countries. And so they're willing to put in the time to translate the articles, translate the announcements, translate the applications, and then help grow those Telegram channels for those particular countries. So that's definitely been a big component as well.
And are these folks are not paid by the foundation? They're not paid by you guys. They're just saying, hey, I'm an investor in Ontology, or I'm an investor and I want to participate and help kind of bring this growth and to the different countries.
Yeah, the latter. They are a part of the community. They hold Ontology token. They're staking their Ontology token. They're participating in the services. They want to see the token value go up. They want to see their wealth grow. They want to see it getting adopted. They want more people using the platforms, because that also, if they want to be able to pay their friends back in ONT, they want to be able to, send ONT places and to use it in things. So it's very much like, when you enter the community, you make it your own, and you say like, well, this is really cool. I want to see more people using this. And so I want to help make that happen. So it's been very organic.
Yeah, and that's kind of, you know, indicative of a really good community of people that are passionate and care about the growth of the environment. We talked a little bit earlier about bringing kind of off-chain data. You were talking about kind of like the Experian API and bringing in kind of credit data. How are you guys kind of in, I don't know if you can answer it specifically, but how are you guys bringing some of that data in? I mean, are you using oracles? Are you using, you know, something like a Chainlink to bring some of that data in? Is it something that you guys have kind of developed on your own? I mean, how does that like kind of off-chain kind of real world data get into some of the decision-making process that's happening?
Yeah, we're partnered with Chainlink, so we use a lot of their price feeds and data feeds for a lot of the, you know, not just credit score, but like for a lot of the credentialing and a lot of the data that Ontology taps into for its applications. So oracles is something that we think about a lot, especially as we think about, you know, the use cases that we're targeting with supply chain and with energy markets, with traditional financial markets that rely on off-chain data. So this is something that, yeah, we're constantly asking ourselves, and we always have to reevaluate and consider, because it's the last mile problem. Like, how do you link a blockchain to something from the real world without sacrificing that trustlessness that and the immutability that blockchain provides? So those are very, very important considerations for off-chain real world use cases, real estate, supply chain, all the stuff that we mentioned. And yeah, I mean, we work with Chainlink on a lot of that, but we're always looking at like, what are the solutions that are out there? What is working the best? Is this something that we need to build in-house, or is this something we can partner on? And we prefer the partnerships, we prefer the collaborations, because I think that there's a lot of players in the blockchain space, and everyone plays a role in the ecosystem, and everyone's focused on their thing, right? So, you know, we've always been a very partnership first company and very collaboration focused, without wanting to become competitive.
Great. And we do have a question from the community. I don't know if you can actually answer it, but it says, hey guys, when will we be able to withdraw from the supply pool?
You should be able to withdraw now if you're talking about RT. That's something you can withdraw. And then the Wing, you could also withdraw it as well. So if you're having issues with like the technicalities of how to do that, you can post in the Telegram chat, which you can find the link on Wing.finance, and an admin there should be able to help you.
There you go. And so, go ahead, John.
Well, I mean, I was just curious, now that we're talking about, you mentioned bringing in Experian data and using Chainlink as a partner, and you know, I'm wondering about, you know, if I were to use Wing Finance, and you know, if I were to have my credit score within my OntID, what does PII look like? What is, you know, is this associated with me, or am I just like an ID in the system that has a number to it associated? You know, privacy and things of that nature. How does transparency meet privacy? How are you dealing with that?
Yeah, so a lot of the way that the credential sharing works, it's credential sharing. So you pick what aspects of your identity you want to share with a particular platform. So it's not necessarily that it's like your real world identity. It doesn't have to be for the credit score. It could just be an address coming in with, and here's the reputation of that address for the particular. And that's the thing, different pools in Wing platform can have different requirements to enter in terms of what you have to be willing to share. So I think the first pool, that's the first identity pool. If you want access to, you know, the lower collateralization ratios and the interest rates, I think in this particular pool, you have to share a Twitter verification to link your, so within the Onto app, you link your OntID to different applications. You can verify yourself for KYC, because we have a decentralized KYC that we're working on. You can link your OntID to your different addresses across different chains. You can link your OntID to different social media platforms like your Facebook, your Twitter. You can link it to your phone number and your email. And what that lets you do, that lets you send ONT to your friends within the Onto app based off of their email. So, you know, each link has like a purpose. But when you interact with the service, you can choose which of those credentials you can share, because each of these are stored as like separate verifiable credentials. So you say like, okay, I want to share this, I want to share this, I want to share this. I don't want to share my Twitter, I don't want to share my email. When you're adding someone as a contact, you can choose what to share. When you're participating in these pools, you can choose what to share. And the idea is that different pools have different requirements. Like if something is really, really heavily regulated, then okay, yeah, maybe they're going to require that you have to share government identification, in which case you could use our decentralized KYC is like reusable KYC. You verify yourself once, and then you have a proof of your identity that you've shown your government blockchain, or you've shown your government ID and verified it, as opposed to like uploading your passport photos to like all these sketchy exchanges. Like there's different ways that you can choose to verify yourself, and it's up to the developer and to the apps to decide what do they want to have to require people to share with them to use their particular platform.
That is really cool. Just throwing that out there. I like that.
When you are working with oracles, and so you get all of the data, but if you want to share data, you're going to share it. It brings us back to ownership and self-sovereign IT, right? So you are the owner of your data, but also your identity, right? You're the only one that can claim, okay, I'm going to share that. I share that, and not this or that. I mean, I'm not responsible for whatever happens to point B and C. I only shared A, right? And it's all about ownership and the sense of it. So I think the biggest task will be not only to work with oracles and off-chain on data, or how to improve the tech itself. I would say that the task in here is to actually educate people and educate comps on why data matters and why identity matters. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're sharing, and is where the profit actually lies on you as an end user. And this is what we're trying to achieve, to not only have the protocol and the framework, but also to educate people. And we launched a series of education rounds. We were in the States. I think that's pretty cool if you mentioned that, because that was very successful. We were crossing and traveling Eric, actually, not me, in some US universities, and actually educating students and developers on why actually data and identity matters, how it works, how the protocol can be developed, how it can be expanded. So that was cool. This is our mission.
Very cool. So, as we got about 12 minutes left before the hour, I do want to, kind of back it up a little bit. And, sometimes we'll ask people, how you got started into blockchain. But for you guys, I just want to know, you guys seem like really smart guys, and you've worked kind of in this industry for a while. Why are you working in the industry, and what makes you excited about working in the industry and the change that it can create? So if you guys want to take a stab at the why question, it would be great to hear, why you're working in the industry.
Well, decentralized by nature, share pretty much kind of the same background like Eric, in terms of family. So my father, he's from Argentina. My mom is from Venezuela. I was born in the US, only lived there for a short time, went back to South America, spent some time in both countries, been living in Europe for 7 years now, constantly traveling. So the concept of centralization is kind of like in my DNA. And I first heard about Bitcoin in 2011, and my first transaction was 2012. And my first kind of interaction, like properly, was to go to a cafe in Berlin, which is called Room 77. I think it was the first cafe worldwide that Bitcoin payments. I bought a beer, basically, and I loved it because there was no bank behind. I just loved the anarchist feeling of it. I loved the empowerment that I felt in there. Like, wow, I don't need anyone. It just felt great, and ever since I've been hooked. It's just, and I won't go back. Yeah.
Bitcoin and beer. I love it. How about you, Eric?
Yes. For me, my mom is Costa Rican, my dad is Ecuadorian. I was born in the U.S. I did grow up in the U.S. I went to a vocational high school. So in the vocational high school, I studied computer repair. So I got to have experience working in the field as a high schooler because part of my class was to work for the school's tech department. So I always really liked computers. I always really liked working on computers and building things. So, you know, imagine me in college learning that you can print money at home with a Bitcoin miner. You just put these computers together, like everything that I've been learning in high school, you know, just you put in some extra GPUs and start mining Bitcoin. My friends and I actually mined Dogecoin my freshman year with computers that we got from the dumpsters. And so, I went to MIT, and when I was there, I was the first student in my high school to get into MIT. So that was like a really big deal. And I was also first generation American, right? So first student or first person in my family to go to college. So being at MIT was really eye opening. And in 2014, which is when I was a sophomore, the MIT Bitcoin Club had just started, and they did a campaign to raise awareness. They raised from alumni. They got like alumni donations. And so they airdropped $100 worth of Bitcoin to every MIT student in 2014. And Bitcoin was $200. So every MIT student got half a Bitcoin. I got half a Bitcoin. It was like, what is this? What is this Bitcoin thing? Let me look into it. And then that kicked off the club, because then people would start coming to the club and like figuring out what to do with their Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin Club also had partnerships with some restaurants around campus in the school store to have places where they can accept your Bitcoin. So it was like almost like immediate being drawn into the community and immediately having some outlets where you can interact with the community and interact with blockchain beyond a speculatory level and a trading level. A lot of people, they got the airdrop, they got the $100 of Bitcoin, and they cashed out. They're like, oh, cool, free $100, cash out. But it was a good way to the people that held on to it. And then, they essentially became the first class of the club, or the first generation of the MIT Bitcoin Club. So I stayed involved with that, became the president of the club by my senior year. Graduated. Through being the president of the club, I got in touch with like all these companies to come and speak on campuses, and that's how I met like all of these blockchain companies, which eventually led to Ontology and where I am now.
Very, very cool. No, awesome. Really, really fun journey for both of you guys. And, I think the communities, should be glad to have you both here and working on such a cool project. And, I'm excited to kind of follow Wing and follow Ontology as it continues to grow, because I'm sure it will. But Eric, John, thank you guys so much for coming on and being a part of the live stream. Thank you everyone for participating and commenting. We appreciate it. This will be up on, we'll have podcasts. This will be on YouTube Live. It'll be on everything. So, make sure you look out. We'll tweet this thing out there. And thanks everyone for joining. And thank you both for being a part of it.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.